Welcome to Green Building Matters, the original and most popular podcast focused on the green building movement. Your host is Charlie Cicchetti, one of the most credentialed experts in the green building industry and one of the few to be honored as a lead fellow. Each week, Charlie welcomes a green building professional from around the globe to share their war stories, career advice, and unique insight into how sustainability is shaping the built environment. So settle in, grab a fresh cup of coffee, and get ready to find out why green building matters.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. Some of you have listened to all 300 episodes. Some of you, this might be the first one. Well, I've got a treat for you today. We've got one of the new lead fellows here. We got to hang out at Green Build a couple months ago, and I got to know Amy more. She's coming to us from just outside of Orlando and just has an amazing green building career that she's been building. So, Amy, welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm glad to be here and excited to share my story and talk more with you today.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk credentials, projects, but one we don't get a lot on the show is PE, commissioning authority, lead fellow. I can't wait to talk about that side of the work you do too. But take us back. Where did you grow up and where'd you end up going to school?
I grew up in a small town that many will recognize, Scranton, Pennsylvania, from either The Office or other affiliation. And I am a very proud Nittany Lion. I went to school at Penn State University, and I have a bachelor's and master's degree in architectural engineering from Penn State.
Great school. And I grew up in Georgia, but we'd go visit my dad's family. We'd drive Interstate 81 and definitely kind of going by there and going through Scranton. Many a snowstorm around Thanksgiving every year on those road trips. But did you know you wanted to get into architecture, engineering, buildings? I mean, what inspired you to go that route with your studies?
I think it was ingrained in me. My father and mother both went to Penn State, so I didn't have a choice. Although I do really love Penn State. But my dad was an engineer, and he actually passed away very early in my life. But everything he taught me, I used to wait for him to come home, and I would look at blueprints. And my dream house, he was a plumbing engineer, so my dream house had about 30 bathrooms in it. He would always bring home, and this is when it was true blueprints, and didn't care that I drew on it or sat there with him with his calculator. And that just really stuck with me. And I ended up being really good in math and science. So it was kind of the ideal fit.
Oh, I love that. That definitely will inspire you to go in that direction. So help us understand that degree. I see it more and more. Some of my best hires in the companies that I have have that kind of degree. So tell us more about it for those that aren't as familiar.
The architectural engineering degree at Penn State focused more heavily on the engineering side, but for buildings specifically. And there are 4 sub options within the AE program, and it's mechanical, electrical / lighting, construction management, and structural. So I chose the mechanical option, which really set me up for success to come out of that degree and out of that school as a mechanical engineer for buildings. And that's focused. It's a really great program, a 5-year program. I think many AE programs do take that, but we do a thesis at the end of our 5th year for our bachelor's. And you have to do your depth of study, which for me was mechanical, but then you also have to look at other components of a building. So 2 breadth areas, which I chose structural and lighting. And that has really helped me when you get into your career and you start to coordinate with all those disciplines from the engineering side of it.
That's incredible. I love that. And then I guess EIT, now professional engineer too. Did you always know? Because some that I know in my network don't go all the way and get their P. So did you always know, hey, that's what I'm going to end up doing?
I did. The company I work for EXP now. I started EXP 18 years ago when we was one of our heritage companies. EXP is now a collection of smaller companies that was acquired into this larger company. But there was always a career path. There was guidance, and you weren't pushed to do it, but it was always recommended because you have the learning, and the PE really does mean a lot. And if you're studying it, you're practicing. It was just really something that was ingrained within us through our mentors and through just the people we work with in the company.
Love that. All right. So when did sustainability, maybe even LEED, come on the scene? I think we've figured out we're about the same age here. Got out of college about the same time I got out in 2004. I think you were right behind me there. So when did sustainability, green buildings, maybe even LEED start showing up in your studies or your career?
I have a terrible origin story. And I'm joking when I say that because I came out of college and the very first projects in the market sector I worked in was hospitality, but I was focused specifically on island hospitality. So high-end luxury resorts in the Caribbean. So I'm a 23-year-old coming out of college and my first project is in Anguilla. And I'm asked, do you have your passport? You're going, you have to put boots on the ground. But, my perception of what was going to happen on these sites, beaches and, I'm in the Caribbean was really different because when I put boots on the ground, I actually saw the lack of resources that were there. So everything we were building, we had to create the infrastructure from electricity, water, wastewater, the construction practices themselves. I mean, you learned so much during the CA process and what you anticipated to be built and what was actually built. And the fact that materials were coming in from a very far distance away. Nothing was locally sourced. Everything had to be imported. And it really shaped the fact that you talk about efficient design, whether it's through your building design, your energy, your water. It wasn't this nice to have thing. It was an absolute necessity. Yeah. So that just really built a baseline for me in my career. And that was 2005 till about 2008. And in 2008, we had a little bit of an economic downturn. And I was reassigned to a different market sector, which was focused on gaming and casinos. In the US, and this is not true of every casino design, but the particular projects I was working on, there was rules of thumb that were outrageously high. A lot of it was safety factor on top of safety factor. Plus, you're looking at buildings that you dump a lot of outside air in. You have a ton of lighting, a ton of electric use, and it's all for the customer experience. And I had to take a step back and really say, is this what I want to do? I don't know that I can design like this. This is not how I was, established myself through my history and design practice. And at that time, another lead fellow, Mike Hess, was forming a sustainability and commissioning group, a service group within our company. And I raised my hand and I said, I don't know what lead is. I don't know what commissioning is. And I have never done an energy model, but I want to learn. And that was about 2009. And that's when I really just put boots on the ground. I did everything I can to learn all three areas of practice. And I've been doing it ever since.
I like that. No, you knew it didn't feel right there on some of those product types, or at least how they were doing it. So I guess that's what brought you to Florida after Penn State, building up this career. And that's how you moved to Florida, doing some of the Caribbean work.
It is. GRG is our heritage company from EXT. Yes. We recruited out of a number of universities, Penn State being one of them. 4 of the principals at the time were Penn State grads. So that it's kind of, we still go back to that career fair. They're a great program. And actually, I'm going to serve a couple of years as part of the industry and professional advisory board for the architectural engineering department from now until 2026.
Yes, that's amazing. So let's talk about mentors. Some along the way, either look up from afar, read material, follow. Some were fortunate to have maybe almost an in-person mentor. Did you have any mentors, anyone that opened a door for you along the way or just encouraged you?
Mike Hess, who I worked for the better part of a decade, he really took me under his wing and taught me everything that I know today. And he, to this day, is somebody I look up to. He continues to be a mentor to me. And I've had different mentors throughout my career, but he really just, everything he stands for and everything that he truly did live by example, that just really helped me, even from beyond the lead practices, just how he managed people, how he worked with others. It was just, really somebody I looked up to and continue to look up to today.
That's exciting. So as you look back on your career, kind of even life so far, what are some of your proudest achievements?
Well, definitely getting my lead fellow was something that I had always aspired for. And I was very fortunate to get that this year. Working to get my professional engineering license, that was something else. And really, the other thing is I've always been somebody who, because I had a great mentor and educator, I wanted to give back. So some of my highlights have been helping students who, I volunteer and answer questions for students that are in the Valencia College program in sustainability, and they have to interview somebody in the industry about LEED buildings or commissioning, and it's talking to this next generation and educating them because, I don't know about you, Charlie, but we didn't have many sustainability classes when I was in college. So it's nice to see that they're there, and it's nice to see that they're including industry professionals in their curriculum so that we can also help, guide and mentor these young minds who are really the future of our industry.
Yeah, no, when I was at Georgia Tech, not as much as really no mention of LEED at the time. And, it came a lot later there. So that's really cool that you're making sure these students, I don't know if you know, 40% of those signed up for the LEED Grant Associate exam are in high school or college. So that's encouraging. Okay, so credentials. You've had multiple LEED credentials. You've got PE. That's obviously a professional engineering license, CXA, commissioning authority. Some others. What are credentials and licenses meant for you in your career?
I would say that, PE, when you go from engineering training to PE, that really establishes you, that you know what you're doing. You have established your career. You've been mentored. You're designing, you're actually putting your name and signing and sealing documents. So that has been big in my career because it opens a lot of doors. When you get to that seat at the table, you are looked at as an expert in some sense. And I would say fast forwarding to today, from having not just LEED AP, because getting the LEED AP, it's very difficult, but having that LEED fellow credential has really elevated, I think, not just me, but everybody in that community, because we are looked at as those who know what's going on, who are applying the rating system, who are educating, who are committed to and serving the community to advance that rating system.
Love it. No, I agree with all of that. Tell us about this one, though. I'm not as familiar, the ENV SP, that kind of sustainable infrastructure credential. Can you tell us about that one?
Yeah. Envision certification is actually one of my newer ones. Within EXP, we have a buildings practice. We also have a very large infrastructure practice. And we are looking at ways to make sure that all of our projects are sustainable. And Envision certification, like LEED, is a very highly sought after rating system for these larger projects where, it's not just a building. How do you look at what and how an infrastructure system is impacting the quality of life and the communities that's surrounding it and the materials that are being used? So very similar to LEED, but for large scale, or even, it could be just a mile or two infrastructure project.
Thank you. I wasn't familiar, but it makes a lot of sense with that whole discipline inside your company. Well, you've mentioned there's been some acquisitions. EXP is obviously the brand you're working with. So tell us more about a day in the life of Vice President of Sustainability there at your firm. Tell us more about your company. What's keeping you busy?
Well, I'll start first with my company. So EXP, we are a privately held engineering and architecture firm that facilitates the whole life cycle of projects from design through construction. We have in the U.S., I'm sorry, I'm pausing here. So we have about 105 offices throughout North America, U.S. and Canada. Our global operations headquarters is in Ontario, and then we have a U.S. headquarters in Chicago. And we serve several different market sectors. I like to say from A to Z. So from aviation through zoos. And it can be where we do building, MEP, we do infrastructure design, transportation design, helping with construction management on certain projects. And what I really love about EXP is our core mission, vision, and values. And our owners are, we're privately held, family that has, through acquisitions, has ended up reacquiring us, and we will always be private. We love that about ourselves, and we keep true to our mission, vision, and values, which includes sustainability at the forefront. So about 2 years ago, aligning with those mission and those visions and values, we created the position of Vice President of Sustainability to kind of oversee. So it's at the corporate level. We have sustainability services that do commissioning, that do infrastructure sustainability, building sustainability, but looking at and ensuring that what we are doing internal to our practice aligns with what we're seeing for ESG reporting. A lot of our clients are publicly traded, so they're asking us what our scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions are. And in order to do that, such a large and diverse company, we needed to have somebody spearhead that. So a day in my life, it could vary. Right now, it's very heavy compliance reporting season. So answering a lot of our client requests for our scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, what we're doing from a social and governance perspective, our ethics, our labor and human rights, all the way down to our EH&S practices. So that's kind of in full swing of getting that in before the end of the year, including our UN Global Compact Communication of Progress. So that's an annual report as well. But then I'm still very heavily involved in projects, whether it's through business development and pursuing new opportunities or helping our 25 sectors with sustainability and making sure that it is integrated into all of our projects. I'm often I call it front-end attack team. So I'm the technical advisor that starts the project off and then provide checkpoints and QA/QC throughout the life of those projects.
You've got a lot going on, and I love how it's, not just one project at a time, portfolios, companies, corporate, ESG, and that's kind of how my career's evolved too, right? It's good to be able to get to that one project, that next, hopefully, net zero project, maybe regenerative design. We love those, but hey, just lead initiatives too. I know lead's been good to you. It's been good to me. But I can tell you love the business development side and the big impact of an entire company and brand that's trusting you. I heard that from you. So projects, it's hard to pick one favorite, but you don't have to pick a favorite. But what kind of projects, when you're kind of maybe applying something like LEED or WELL or FIL, what kind of projects do you really enjoy working on?
You know what? My favorite are the newcomers. So people who may not have utilized the rating system or maybe kicking off their sustainability journey or have had the baseline and are now looking to try to amplify it and to go beyond. And some of those I find most rewarding because you may have a team that's never touched a quote unquote sustainable project. They've been doing sustainability. It just hasn't been going. So it's fun to have those meetings and almost have that aha moment when you're sitting there saying, well, are you doing this? Are you looking at really efficient HVAC systems? Are you using LED lights? Are you applying controls? Are you optimizing your chiller sequences? And when they're saying yes, you are sitting there saying, well, you are doing really, these are best practices. These are sustainable measures. In bringing them along and almost having them finally put on their green hat and saying, we are doing sustainable things, to me is just so rewarding and so amazing. And you often have a lot of young staff on those projects too. So again, it's that education and mentoring and training and building that into their career. So it's what you're doing. It's how you're doing it on a day-to-day basis, whether you have a plaque or not. And those to me are, I think, are the best projects.
That's really cool. No, really making big change there, right? Not just tweaking, get a couple extra lead points, massive change, and they're going to do other projects. You've had big influence on them for those newcomers. I love that. So let's talk about the future. I love asking a green building professional, what's exciting you about the future of the green building movement? Anything you're reading up on or you at least know is coming our way?
Yeah, I still nerd out on my engineering, even though I joke that I'm more of a generalist now. And I do. I have a holistic approach to sustainability. I have to in my role. But I like to geek out on the engineering stuff as often as I can. And the electrification efforts that we are seeing from not only, new buildings, but that existing building stock. And there are some owners that we are working with who are taking buildings on their entire campus and mapping out that pathways to electrify. We're not talking like net zero or carbon. It's, the first step is electrification, seeing if the grid can handle it. And then while we're having that conversation with them, we're also able to talk about, efficiency still plays a key role when you're doing that. You can't just flip the switch. You can't say, oh, you're off natural gas, put it on electric. You still have to talk about efficiency, conservation, renewable energy. So that to me is the most exciting, and seeing how each market sector, how each industry is responding to that transition to electrification. And then on the flip side of it, from the materials perspective, I love seeing a lot of money in this research and development to help create more EPDs and ensure that we have availability of these low embodied carbon materials. GSA has come out with a lot of their projects and that we shall use these products. And I think that's going to bring along a lot of the private sector too. Once they see that, the government is leading by example, now we'll have the availability of these materials and we're all just going to follow along. And I think, in a decade or so, we're going to come to this point where, we can look back and say we've accomplished so much in from 2023 until, maybe 2035.
Yeah, there's still work to do on the operating carbon side. And you're right, electrification's a big part there. And then embodied carbon, at least it's been heating up for the last 5+ years, but you're right, that's really still that next chapter, better materials, healthier materials, but low embodied carbon materials. So electrification, educate us on that. What's some of the hardest parts of electrifying, maybe even a retrofit? Any tips for our audience here?
Yeah, the biggest challenge we're seeing often is service size, so existing service size to the building. And can your utility provider, often, we're seeing that a second service may be needed in some applications. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is space requirements. So if, some of this equipment might be larger, you might need more capacity depending on what type of technology you're looking at. The space to do these retrofits has become a challenge for us in some projects, not all.
Yeah, no, and that affects the real estate and the rentable square footer, depending on what kind of building it is. But I'm sure some owner-occupied properties, right, they'll make the room. So let's get to know you a little more with some somewhat rapid-fire questions here. Amy, what would you say is your specialty or gift?
I like to talk. I have the gift of gab.
Gab, all right. Well, I know your profile picture on LinkedIn is you speaking. You love to get out and teach or speak, or tell us more about that. Why do you think you like that? Any tips? Because a lot of people have a fear of public speaking, but it sounds like you've overcome that.
Definitely was not my strong point 20 years ago, but I had a lot of great mentors who, again, early in my career brought me to the table, brought me to meetings. And that's not something you're taught in school. I didn't get a course on project coordinator, project management, how to deal with clients. So a lot of my early experiences going to these meetings, these massive design charrettes, has taught me to become more client facing, more willing to speak, and a lot more comfortable with it. So when I talk and mentor to a lot of students, I bring it up. I say, talk to as many people as you can. If you can take a course in public speaking, or just get out to career fairs, come to these networking events and talk to professionals, because you'll learn how to interact. And that's not something I had. So I marched on the job. That's kind of how I overcame it, because I was thrown in a good way.
Yeah, to those listening, take your junior team members with you to those meetings. They think it's a big deal. Get some client face time, and you're right. Just you're forced to talk to more people. I love that. What are some of your favorite topics to maybe teach about?
Being a female engineer, I often mentor female engineers or students coming up, and the topic I like to talk about one is always, stay true to yourself, speak up, and be sure that you show your qualifications. Because I was very fortunate. My very first project manager didn't see race, gender, age, anything. And we were all treated as equal. And if you did a good job, you got the next job. Your performance, you got the next great job. They brought you to meetings. So learn, be sure that you show your qualifications, and don't be afraid to speak up. And I tell that a lot to females, because I think there's a perception that they need to stay silent. That was a perception that I've heard from a lot of young folks, and it's not. Show your strong points, show your qualities, and make sure that you have a seat at that table.
Love that. Wow. That's some great advice there. Well, wisdom's more like you've lived it. That's your story. It worked for you, and others should do the same. So how about habits? Do you have any good habits or routines that keep you on point?
Every morning I get up, I walk my dog, and I go to Pilates. So it's kickstarting my day, keeping my mind and body healthy. And I always feel energized. Those are my healthy habits. Now, on the flip side, I also have my wine certification. So I do have a habit of, when it is truly the end of the day, even just a small glass keeps me that nice work-life balance, kind of resets you for the night, gets you ready for the next day.
Got to keep that palate sharp. That's great. With some friends to Sonoma this past summer. That was a good time. All right. Bucket list. What are a couple things maybe on your bucket list?
I have recently got the travel bug to Europe. So my bucket list includes visiting every European country, and I keep checking them off. I'll be in Germany and Austria for Christmas. Wow. So 2 more that I'll get to check off, but definitely traveling the world and getting as many stamps in my passport as I can.
I bet that's an amazing place around Christmas too. I've heard wonderful things. So have a great trip. You have to share some pictures. That's really cool. So how about books or podcasts, documentary? I love to ask my podcast guests, is there a book you'd recommend? It doesn't even have to be about buildings.
Oh, goodness.
Or how do you, digest content? Or is there another podcast to listen to? Just kind of a pro tip. Here's something I use, a tool or something like that.
I'm not much of a book reader. I wish I was, but I will tell you that I stay on top of the latest I listen to your podcast so I can advocate for yours, but there's a couple. Building Green has a really good newsletter. They have great articles. They've got Paul Melton does a great job summarizing a lot of conferences she's been to. And I find that it's very concise, but also it's a lot of accurate information. She did a great summary of all of the LEED V5 presentations from Greenbuild this last year. And it's somewhere where I feel like they are just a little bit ahead of the pulse and always have very relevant content. So I kind of look for that in my inbox every day or two.
Yeah, solid resource. I'll put a link there to that resource. Thank you. And thanks for listening to our podcast here. Just a couple more things. I'm loving our conversation here, Amy. As you look back on your career, is there anything you wish you'd known earlier, or just any career advice you wish you'd known earlier?
Don't go into a day thinking that everything you have on your list is going to be accomplished. I'm a very type A person. I like to check off to-do lists and task lists. And, early on or even last week, I have the list and nothing gets done because there are fire drills, there are urgent things, there are just more important priorities than what you thought you had for that day. So I wish early in my career that I learned to, embrace that each day is different, as opposed to being stressed out about the fact that I didn't check a box on my task list that day.
I use Trello for my to-do list, and I like moving things off, checking it off. But that, you don't want to be stressful, right? It's like, oh, look at all the things I didn't get to, right? Glass is half empty or half full. So thank you for that. Well, lastly, okay, let's say someone is listening. They're getting really inspired by your story, and they're either just now jumping into the green building movement, or maybe they're making a career change and they're jumping in a little later in their career, but they're just very excited. Again, they've been inspired by your story. So if someone's jumping in right now, as we come to a close, any words of encouragement, Amy, for them?
Find a person in the industry. I will tell you that jumping from just all engineering to mostly sustainability, the sustainability community is so willing to help you no matter where you are in your career. If you're a newbie, if you're a veteran, we all have the same goal. There is too much work to be done in a short amount of time. I would say find your person, find your people, find your community, and just talk to them and learn and listen. And you're going to learn from them. They're going to learn from you.
Find your person. Hey, everybody, I hope you loved hearing Amy's story. Check out the great work she's doing there with EXP. Maybe shoot her a message on LinkedIn. Let her know what you thought of the podcast today. And Amy, I look forward to hanging out more in our LEED Fellow Club. But if you need anything, just let me know. And thanks for spending time with us today.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At GBES.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to GBES.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode. And you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.